It's been a long wait, but the Battlefield 6 open beta has finally given us a real taste of what EA and DICE are delivering. There's a lot to unpack, booming player numbers, exciting promises, but also some friction points. Today I'm going to go through the wins, the issues, what people are saying, including other big creators like Jack Frags, and what I'm personally excited or wary about going into the full launch in October. Firstly, the numbers. The Battlefield 6 beta smashed several records. On Steam alone, the beta peaked at around 520,000 concurrent players, outpacing the franchise's previous records and even beating Call of Duty's all-time high on that platform. The matches were enormous in volume. EA reports over 420 million matches played, that's absolutely crazy, and over 92 million hours of gameplay across the open beta period. This isn't just hype, it's real engagement. Many long-time fans were skeptical about Battlefield 2042, and these stats suggest Battlefield 6 is making strong headway in regaining some trust, which I think is really positive. The feel of the game impressed many reviewers. On PS5, PC, etc., people noted solid visuals, satisfying destruction of environments, blowing through cover, see-through damage, atmospheric effects, etc., and good performance even in chaotic moments. Also, the sound design has stood out. It's not just loud explosions, but ambience, the recoil audio, the vehicle sounds. Not perfect everywhere, but definitely a step in the right direction in my opinion. There's also been a responsive feedback loop. Several issues raised during the beta regarding the vehicle balance, some overpowered weaponry, spotting, ping, the massive issue with the Doritos, time to kill, etc. have all been acknowledged by the devs, and in some cases adjusted or slated for tuning in the future. So in short, strong engagement, technical base that seems solid, and atmosphere and scale that many hope for, and the devs are listening, which is really good. It's not all perfect though. There are several areas that drew criticism, especially for me, and some issues that might impact whether BF6 lives up to expectations. One of the biggest complaints is class balance. The Assault class was picked far more than others, around 32% during the beta, largely because of its special ability to carry an extra primary weapon. I think this led to overpowered scenarios, especially during using those powerful shotguns in close quarters. That shotgun's definitely getting nerfed, isn't it? Linked to that, the TTK and the TTD felt very fast in some fights. Some of this was blamed on synchronization and network bugs, like Super Bullet style feedback, which exacerbated how quickly the fights ended. Another common complaint, the fragility of vehicles, I should say, and the weapon versus vehicle balance. Engineers and open weapon loadouts could deal some very heavy damage to helicopters and tanks in certain situations, and they sometimes felt very weak, to be honest. Devs have said that this is being tuned, so we'll have to see how this plays out going into the release. The spotting ping system, I know a lot of people were complaining about the Doritos. They really disliking how aggressive the auto spotting mechanics were. Sometimes it felt like people were just spotted so damn much. It was really quite ridiculous at some points, to be honest, especially from what I felt. Enemies being tagged with big markers made some encounters feel less about skill and more just reacting to the visible icons. You weren't really like taking in situations, you're just basically farming the pings and basically just shooting at the icons through cover, shooting at the icons through smoke rather than actually, looking on screen for cues of people to find and shoot. The devs are scaling this back ahead of launch, which is obviously good to know. There were some technical issues as well, some hit reg problems as usual, some occasional glitches in gadgets, inconsistent behaviour in movement and clambering, and some grenade interactions which were very odd. Sometimes I was getting killed by grenades through cover, which is obviously something to do with the destruction and how basically sometimes the geometry wasn't there to stop you from getting killed by grenades even though it looked like it was there, so something else just to tune going into launch. Also, the map design criticisms. Many people felt like the maps were too small, too infantry focused and not enough of a large scale, or the open warfare that old Battlefield games delivered. I think this was largely just due to the fact that they were trying to appeal to the more of a Call of Duty audience going into the beta. You can't deny that the beta was a massive success in terms of getting people to try the game at the very least, and I think a lot of people came out of it feeling like it was a pretty good experience overall. But I definitely feel like the maps were on the smaller side, and they definitely did deliberately give us the smaller maps first so that people felt like they were getting a bit more bedded into that, quick time to engagement that people are so used to in the modern military shooter genre at the moment. But I do think some bigger maps are coming for the big release, so hopefully we can get more of a consistent, different scale of, we want that Battlefield experience basically, don't we? We want those bigger maps. I think Mirak Valley is going to be interesting to see how big that is, slated as the biggest map, and obviously Firestorm as well. We're going to be seeing some bigger maps, so hopefully the balance feels a bit better when we do get the launch in October. Server issues weren't massive outages, but queues were often long during those peak times. Queuing into the actual game itself was more of an issue for me, but I did feel like this was actually pretty good, to be honest, and I did get into games usually within 30 seconds, and also the rollover from game to game felt quick as well, especially compared to 2042, where there was sometimes really long wait times for games. So I don't think this is going to be a massive issue. I think just they weren't expecting the sheer number of players. It's definitely going to be interesting to see if they bump the servers up going into the launch, because I think they're going to need to be honest. Big voices in the FPS and Battlefield space have been cautiously optimistic. A lot of reviewers say, like Tom's guide, praising the visual sound and the return of satisfying destruction, saying BF6 might finally be the revival of the series that it needs. I think definitely after 2042 and the absolute debacle that game was, BF6 is looking very promising indeed. Creators like Jack Frags, who are not shy about the game's weaknesses, seem very encouraged by what they saw. For example, his videos noted that despite the issues, the core of Battlefield, the big maps, the multiple vehicle types, the destruction and the squad-based combat feel more present than it has in recent entries. I think this is going to be very important as well in terms of the class system and whether or not those big maps are going to be big enough. He's raised concerns about the balance and polish, but it seems to believe that the beta has shown lots of potential, and I think a lot of big creators came out of the beta thinking that this was a very good starting block that could potentially turn into a very excellent game going forward. I saw several community threads echoing that sentiment. It feels like Battlefield's back on track, but also we'll have to see if EA sticks to what they promise. Speaking personally, I came away from the beta feeling more excited than I expected actually. I remember how many of us were let down by Battlefield 2042, things that felt like missed opportunities, features that promised but under-delivered. But BF6 seems like it's making an effort to correct that and get back on track for the BF6. Basically just the DNA of what the franchise is, the destruction, the systems, especially, I think for me, seeing cover collapse here in the world feel more alive. And I mean 2042, when you play that game, it just feels so hollow in terms of the destruction. The best maps on that game are maps that are from old Battlefield games, not the actual maps that they made for it, which I think says it all really in terms of what people wanted and then what people got in the end. Also, big firefights with vehicles and air support overhead. The chaos felt very close, and I think especially all the atmospheric effects they put in really do make you feel like you're on a battlefield again. As I said, again quoting 2042, the fights on that game felt so clean. There was no cover, no destruction. It didn't feel like a war zone. All the environments were way too crispy and clean. Just the whole thing just felt totally wrong and not like a war zone. On the other hand, there are some problems that are worrying me though. Like the open weapons system is a bit of a issue in my opinion. I think they just need to bite the bullet and lock this down. The open class system on paper gives it freedom, but it is risking diluting the class roles and the identity of the game. I think this is really something that they need to clamp down on if they want to keep that Battlefield experience. I think it's a core of what makes Battlefield unique, to be honest, and if you lose that, then it has the risk of just feeling like any other shooter. If everyone can carry everything, then classes lose their identity. I think the TTD particularly, although the TTK also being quite fast, I think it's there were some times where people were saying they were dying in like 1 or 2 bullets to LMGs in terms of TTD. I think this could be to do with the tick rate on servers, but overall I do think that this is also going to be a potential issue. I really hope that the balance tuning is effective, and I also worry about the map size. If a lot of the maps are smaller, I do feel like we're going to lose a lot of that all-out war feel that we do need for Battlefield to keep its identity as well. We've had several key trailers and reveals since the beta, some cinematic and some more gameplay focused. The reveal trailer, where they leaned heavily into the cinematic visuals and the destructible cities, it got some mixed feedback. Impressive for spectacle, but some insiders and fans criticised it for the lack of the clear gameplay. But I think gameplay previews from creators like Jack Frags etc. showed off the large-scale conquest matches, lots of vehicle action and destructible environments. I've also seen some leaked footage of the Firestorm game mode as well, which looks very promising. I won't touch on that too much in this video, I might do a dedicated video for that, but I have seen some leaked gameplay for it and it does look potentially really good. Huge maps, very interesting Battle Royale style gameplay. Going to be very interested to see how that shakes out going through launch as well. A lot of the gameplay trailers helped to ground the cinematic promises and show us what actual combat looked like. Overall, I do think that things are going to be fine. I think the beta has given us definitely enough to get our teeth into. And I think, given what we've seen, here are the things that I'm looking forward to and what will be the key Battlefield 6 successes in my opinion. The first thing that they need to make sure they get right is the balanced classes and weapons. I want class roles that matter. I think the engineer especially needs to be fully class locked in terms of rockets, etc. Just that I think in general the class system and the identity of the class is so important. I think the reduced dominance of the shotgun as well, I think that's definitely going to get nerfed. Obviously dual wielding two assault rifles is probably bad enough, to be honest, but that shotgun was obviously very ubiquitous, especially with the small maps that we did have, with lots of, you know, close corridors, etc. I think the shotgun was very overpowered in those small map instances especially. The second thing is larger maps and varied modes. The beta smaller or mid-sized maps are good for intense combat, as I said, but one of the Battlefield's signature strengths is its huge, sprawling maps where strategy, flanking, coordination and vehicle warfare really matter. I think this is really important, and I think the ability to be tactical and have those larger maps is just essential to the Battlefield DNA, in my opinion. I think if the launch can deliver us 2 or 3 really big maps, I think that that's going to really help to get the balance right in terms of small, medium and large maps. The next point is that polish and technical stability. I think the hit reg and the TTK, some of the movement inconsistency as well. It did feel like sometimes I was kind of bobbing around, especially going over some cover. Just a lot of bugs there, or a little bit of smooth and refinement needed, but I think these things will get basically tweaked at launch. I think we're off to a much better start already if all these things can get implemented, and judging by how the good of a state the Battlefield 6 beta was in compared to 2042 launch, I think we're in for a treat in terms of things being good. And also one of the other things that I'm really interested in is if we can get some good post-launch support and the content roadmap, Battle Pass content, map packs, events, maybe seasonal content. Personally, I want to see lots of maps being introduced consistently. I'd like to see a new map or 2 new maps every 1, 2, 3 months. I think this is really essential. Going from what we were talking about, again, 2042. In previous titles in the past, I think we've had lots and lots of new maps. Was it Battlefield 3 that every 3 months they released 2 new maps and 1 new small map as well? I think they really need to keep giving us new maps, new environments. Hopefully the 9 maps on launch are going to be good enough to keep us interested, and I think they probably will for the first 6 months, but I would expect if they're going to really support this game and make it the success that I think they know they want to, and I know that it could be, we all know that it could be, they need to be releasing 2 maps every 3 months, in my opinion. And they need to be big maps, and they need to be interesting, because ultimately Battlefield is about those big maps. And I think 9 maps on launch, hopefully that gives us the impression they're already working on a few more maps for the Battle Pass going forward, and for, you know, more seasons coming in. They need to be releasing new maps consistently, in my opinion. And finally, I think the atmosphere and immersion, they've done a really good job with this, I think, during the beta, and I haven't got many complaints about this at all. I think if we can keep that up, and especially going into the launch, if we can make sure there's that emphasis on destruction of environments and ambient chaos, which is obviously already embedded into the DNA of BF6, I think this is going to be a really big success. So provided that they can iron out some of those issues, especially for me, that TTK and TTD, making sure the maps are big and making sure the classes feel like they have a clear identity, I think we're going to be having a really promising launch. Overall, if that's the case, I think that this game is going to have a really good time going into the next few months. Overall, I think Battlefield 6 beta was a success by many metrics. It broke a lot of records, it generated loads of hype, and it delivered on a lot of things that fans have been asking for: the destruction, the large-scale combat, and the satisfying sound and visual feedback. There's still a lot of work in progress elements for me. I think the balancing and the map scale, as I've said, those ping mechanics definitely need to be tuned down. Some of the polish and some of the movement mechanics need to be polished up as well. But I think EA and DICE are definitely going to follow through, and I think they've got the DNA of the game right this time for me. And I think if they can just iron out some of these areas, it's going to be a really successful game. There's definitely a lot of interesting stuff in there. There's some things that I want to see changed, there's some things that I want to see tweaked, but I definitely think that they're on the right track, and we'll see how things go. So as always, I do appreciate you watching. If you like this, please do drop a comment down below. What was your experience of the beta? What do you think about it? Let me know in the comments below. Drop a like and subscribe, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.